Doug, the floor is yours.
Okay, so everyone could see my slides and everyone could hear me well, right? Okay, all right. So, hey, so first of all, I want to start by saying that it is an extreme privilege to be here as a finalist for the Gary Lillian Practice Prize. The project that I'm going to present is joint work with first of all, the chairman and the owner of the company, focal company, Hassan Osei is here, and also the CEO who manages the everyday operations, which we collaborated on his year, and he's going to sort of go through us the kind of the tensions and the problems and the issues that the firm faced before we started this project. So a warm welcome for Hakan. Hey, Hakan.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Hakan Şahin, and I'm the CEO of Nobel İlaç, a proud leading pharmaceutical company in Turkey and 20 other countries, mainly in Central Asia, Balkans, and Western Europe. I'm highly honored by the fact that Nobel's collaboration with Professor Chung was selected as a finalist for the 2020 Gary Lillian Practice Prize competition. I would like to take this time to share the sales management concerns that we had before the project and how Nobel was able to successfully address those concerns through research collaboration with Professor Chung's team at Harvard Business School. When I first joined to Nobel at the end of 2013, we were losing market share and our EBITDA was negative. I remember thinking back then, the company needed a more systematic and structured approach in its sales management and probably renew its route to market strategy. So we implemented a number of successful projects to transform Nobel into a healthy state, such as cutting unnecessary costs, renewing the product portfolio, and initiating the pharmacy segmentation project. The efforts started paying off quickly. In 2014, we closed the year at break-even. As of 2015, we started to gain back market share and delivered plus 10% EBITDA. However, there were still two things that kept me up at night, which I thought was holding back Nobel from achieving the full potential. The first one was that many of our salespeople were leaving us. Despite the sales and profitability on the increase, one out of every 5 salespeople left us voluntarily, while major multinational companies controlled their employee attrition rate as low as 7%. Because most people were leaving due to low pay, my immediate reaction was obviously to review our compensation scheme versus the generics competition. We were already paying very close to other competitors, yet there was also the question of how much more, since this directly leads to extra cost. The second issue was how should we fill the employee vacancies? One option was to bring experienced salespeople from other pharma companies, and the other one was obviously to hire fresh graduates. I was tempted to hire fresh graduates because they work enthusiastically at lower cost and adapt faster into our company culture and also into new way of working at Nobel. However, much of the turnover also came from these young people with less than 2 years of tenure, which goes back to our first concern. I thought Nobel needed to resolve these combined issues on employee turnover and hiring in order to keep the growth going. In addition, I was not so sure if we were giving ample adequate training to our salespeople and providing them career opportunities within the company. In the summer of 2017, we were given a wonderful opportunity to work on this case and the sales management issues with Professor Chung's team. The journey so far has been very exciting and fruitful. The collaboration brought great outcomes and the opportunity to learn more about ourselves. During the first meeting with Professor Chung, we realized that there were more scientific and structural approaches to solving the issues we faced. We happily collaborated and provided necessary data for the research, and in return received a number of suggestions viewed from various directions. Among number of suggestions by the research team, we choose the best set of actions that align with our desired objective, namely mainly maintaining sustainable growth and profitability, and obviously decreasing employee attrition. In 2018, we decided to increase our bonus scheme and to start hiring fresh graduates, but with ample training opportunities attached to it. As a result of implementing the new policies, we increased our sales by 9% and managed to increase our market share further. Now we have increased our market share for 5 consecutive years. Our sales are above 200 million USD by now, and with a healthy EBITDA of 26%. Employee turnover decreased significantly to 11%. So let me now return the talk to Professor Chung to see how this wonderful journey was made possible. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Hakan. Thank you, Hakan. So I'm going to go through I'm going to start off with Hakan laid out the management concerns for Nobel. I'm going to kind of go through, how in a bigger picture, how this would apply in general settings. So, okay. So the contents will be more of like motivation about the problem, the managerial issues and the company details, and then getting to the model of the salespeople's behavior. And then the results and the counterfactual predictions that we advised Hakan of, and how we could kind of generalize our findings and what is the impact of this research. So to motivate the problem, why sales? Why Salesforce management? Why is this important? Why should we care? So this is in the United States. In the United States, there's about 15 million people who are employed in personal selling or sales, which represents about 10% of the entire adult population. $800 billion were spent annually on personal selling or sales. This actually is 4 times more than the entire media advertising, which includes just media, meaning television, and also digital advertising in the United States. Just a simple question, guess how much $800 billion is, just to give you a scope of the size of this amount. Guess how much that is in GDP in a country? It's actually the entire GDP of Turkey. Entire GDP of Turkey. That's how much money US firms spent on personal selling. Now, but how should we manage the sales force? So it's a $1 million question. It's actually a $1 billion question. So basically it's how to recruit people, how to train them, and how to compensate them. It seems like a very simple question. Obviously, it's not going to be that simple. But so, these are kind of the having talked with the managers, sales managers in various countries, these are kind of the general sales management questions that have come up. So how does compensation components affect performance and attrition? How does sales training affect performance and attrition? How should we recruit salespeople? What types of salespeople should we recruit? And then why do salespeople quit? Is it because of compensation or because of other issues? So in a sense, we need to infer. We need to infer, meaning we need to infer the behavior of salespeople. And in order to do that, we need a stylist model. We need a realistic, comprehensive model of salespeople's behavior. Let me kind of go by one. This is like, let's say compensation, for example, compensation. So this is a typical compensation scheme. This on the x-axis is sales here, and y-axis is salespeople's earnings. And this is like you have a salary here and linear commissions. Linear commissions, popular with auto salespeople, etc. In B2B industries, typically there is what's called a quota, a goal. So people could be earning a lump sum bonus or start earning commissions at the start quota. Obviously, there could be a combination of different types of components, but which component is right for your firm? Which compensation plan is right for your firm? And then in terms of recruiting, no matter what kind of organization you go to, it's there are those high performers, and then there's those mid performers or core performers, and then there's the low types that needs help. Typically, we would see that the experienced people would fall on the higher side and the rookies would fall on the lower side. Now, which one should we, recruit? That's a question as well. So, why do we care about this? Why would this matter? So an organization always would probably have to start with what is the outcome of interest? The outcome of interest, meaning for a startup, it would be any sales. For a more established company, it will be more profitable sales. Or it could be, in Nobel's case, employee attrition. Or is it short-term sales? Or is it long-term sales? So you got to show some kind of an outcome of objective that the organization needs. We call it typically the sales process, or the process that leads to the outcome of interest. A typical sales process in B2B would be something like this, where it starts off with leads, it goes down to account. Nowadays, at the top of the funnel, it's morally, it's overtaken by marketing and overtaken by AI, but still lots of human interactions exist in this part of the funnel. But the sales process, that has to map onto the salespeople's behavior, and these so-called are the levers, the sales management instruments that could influence the right behavior for the outcome of interest: recruiting, compensation, and training. So the managerial issues, as Hakan has stated, this is a Turkish pharmaceutical company, CEO Hakan Sain, direct sales force about 350 salespeople. Marketing conditions, as you know, in most countries, except for the United States, there's regulated prices. In Turkey, the prices are actually set. It's the government sets the prices, and then no direct-to-consumer mass media advertising. So I believe only the United States and New Zealand in the world allows mass media advertising of pharmaceutical goods. So in Turkey, basically the salespeople are the only firm customer interaction. The problem, as Hakan alluded to, was this high voluntary attrition rate. So people were, just leaving the company. You see 25% of your salespeople leaving the company. That's a big problem. That's a big problem. What comes up to your mind? The first thing that comes up to your mind when you see 25% of your sales force or workforce leaving the company? I know we have academics and we have practitioners in the audience. Typically, when I speak to both academics and practitioners, the first thing that just comes up to mind is, hey, we should increase the fixed salary. That would prevent the attrition. Okay, maybe let's hold on to that thought. All right, the other dilemma was over recruiting. So basically, as Hakan mentioned too, we could get these experienced salespeople from rivals companies. They're pre-equipped with sales skills. They're probably better in the short-term selling. Or we could go in inexperienced rookies and train them. They're cheaper, obviously, and we are able to nurture them effectively. So there's that trade-off there. There's some dilemma over sales training in a sense that, how much should we invest, and then who to invest to? Should we invest to experienced salespeople? Should we invest in to the rookies? So this is the data, and as you can see, with this active collaboration with Hakan, we received all their data. The descriptive statistics here, you see, roughly, I'll just go over a couple of numbers here. On average, they make about $1,500. You could see there, I divided them up by people who quit and who decide to stay. The people who meet quota, about 30% of the people who meet quota, they decide to stay. The people who decide to quit, they meet less of quota. So obviously they make less money as well. Look at the compensation plan. They have a fairly general compensation plan in a sense. There is an annual quota bonus of $8,500 and overachievement commission capped at another additional $8,500. One thing unique about this firm, its compensation system was there's a 20% annual bonus per quarter that's accrued over time. So let me give you what that means. The example will be, so suppose, let's say, Kusum is the first one I see in my Zoom feed here. So Kusum is a sales person in this firm. So she would make $1,500 in monthly salary every month. If she meets the first quarter quota, which is cumulative, January, February, and March, she makes $1,700. If she meets the second quarter quota, which is also cumulative, then she makes $3,400 minus whatever she made in the first quarter. So what happens is if she met quota in the first quarter, then she would only get $1,700 even if she meets quota in the second quarter. If she did not make quota in the first quarter, then she would make $3,400 in the second quarter if she meets quota. So this would go on, and then this would be capped at $8,500, and then a 2% cumulative overachievement commission on top of this. So graphically, it would look something like this. So it's simply put every month on March, it would be a simple quarterly quota bonus here. Same June, same September, and then only December, there will be an overachievement commission that would kick in. So now I described what the managerial problem was, what the data looks like. So let's go into the model. But why do we need a model to begin with? So evaluating sales management practices. To evaluate them, a firm needs to change its sales management practices. What I mean by this, okay, so back to Kusum. Suppose Kusum is this person. Obviously, the hair is shorter here, okay? Kusum is a BMW salesperson. All right, she has a bonus. She's under a bonus scheme of $5,000, and she sells about 50 cars a year. Now, to actually gauge the effectiveness of how Kusum would respond to other compensation plans, you will need to change. As a firm, you need to change it. And then you need to show how much that jump would be based on that. Would it be, would she sell, if Kusum's bonus scheme was changed to $10,000, would she sell 75 cars? Would she sell 100 cars? You don't know. Now, you could do it with a field experiment, yes. But with a field experiment, it's very, very complex because there's two things. You need a control group that does not know that you're under a different scheme. And to do that in a B2B industry, it's very, very high. It's costly and sometimes infeasible. Now, also on top of that, there's firm's operational costs. And then typically, it's very, very difficult to revert back if policies are wrong. Suppose a $10,000 bonus is not doing anything. It's very difficult to revert back. That's why we need a model. So our model is based on salespeople's underlying preferences. Based on past data, we're getting Kusum's ability to work or pain of work, or how much she likes to work, how much she values money, how much she does not like risk, how much she values the future and her time, and how responsive is she to these kind of training programs. That's why the reason we do this is we want to predict salespeople's behavior. So let's get into the model. The model is sales function. So sales of Q of Kusum I at time T month is a function of her effort and some sales knowledge. Kusam sales knowledge will be a function of cumulative training, sales training that she gets. And then other other characteristics such as tenure and education. Obviously, there will be some kind of a shock. Sometimes, in some cases, Kusam works very hard, but she gets unlucky. She doesn't make sales. Sometimes she doesn't work hard, and then she gets lucky and she makes sales. So there will be that shock. Her utility function would look something like this. If she decides to stay, then she will get some kind of a reservation. If she decides to leave the firm, she would get some kind of a reservation value, meaning what her outside opportunities will be. And then if she decides to stay, then she would make compensation, meaning through money. And she would sometimes get disutility from risk. And then obviously she would get some disutility from working. So that's kind of the model. Now I know for people who know Kusam is actually smarter than that. So she does not only care about her present utility, she would care about her future utility. And this is where it takes in how much she values the future as well. Go to the results. So we estimate this model, and we're getting preferences for Kusam, we're getting preferences for John, we're getting preferences for Cohen, we're getting preferences for all the 350 salespeople out there. And we kind of identified 3 latent segments. So we call them, for like simplicity, the low types, the medium types, and the high types. What we see is that the low types, they show a lot of present bias, meaning they don't care about the future. And then the sales response function, sales is a function of tenure, positive effect of tenure, not surprisingly. Positive effect on training, but mostly affects the junior folks. And the utility function, the high types, as you would expect, their disutility or their efficiency is lower. Their efficiency higher, disutility is efficiency is higher, disutility is lower, meaning that Kusam's pain of working is lower than a low type like me. And then for the low types, disutility parameters are higher, they're less efficient. Also, their base reservation value, they don't have that much outside opportunities. So we now have Kusam's preferences, we have Cohen's preferences, we have John's preferences. We have all these preferences of how much they like, how much they have outside opportunities, how much they value money, how much they don't like risk, how little or less they put in effort in working. And based on that, if we could, without any kind of an experiment, we could change the sales management policies to predict Kusam's behavior. So first of all, Nobel started with, hey, let's increase the base salary to fight off attrition. So decide to increase the salary by 10%. This is what happened. So basically, the employee attrition rate decreases. So employees are staying with the firm. So that's great. But you could see that the annual performance, their sales go down as well. We just decided to increase the salary, but their sales goes down. Why is that the case? It turned out that the low type salespeople who would have otherwise left the firm, they would decide to stay. Another counterfactual experiment prediction is what happens if we to increase bonuses? Then you could see sales would go up, but it would have a less effect on employee attrition. And then what happens if we were to increase sales training by 50% or 12 hours? The pattern looks similar to increasing a bonus level. Now, think about what makes training, what happens with increase in training? It makes salespeople better at selling. First of all, yes, that increases firm performance, right? That actually, salespeople make more money because they're selling more, and then they decide to stay more. So there is a virtuous cycle behind training. Another counterfactual experiment that we did was recruiting policy. So rookies, they have a lower base salary, so we could offer them training opportunities. What it sees is this is its predictions of years 0 to 5. When the blue line is rookies and experience is the red line. You could see the experience. The rookies, they gradually increase their sales, their performance. While the experience, they're high at initially, but they stay stable. And then if you look at the attrition, the rookies would actually start off leaving the firm, but gradually, because they get lots of training through it, and they would stick on with the firm. So if you adjust attrition-based performance between the experienced and the rookies, there will be kind of a cutoff where at year 4, where the rookies would take over their performance and their benefits to the firm. So in a sense, if you're, as a firm, as an organization, if you're looking to increase your short-term sales, then hiring the experience would be the optimal strategy in terms of recruiting. But if you're inclined for long-term growth, maybe that's not the best solution. So impact and transportability, based on the findings, as Hakan suggested, we suggested a couple of action plans. Hakan decided to raise its bonus amount by 20%, offered an additional 12 hours of training, changes employee selection criteria from recruiting experienced salespeople to hire and train rookies. There has been substantial improvements in sales. Sales improved by 9%, and the attrition rate fell down to about 11%. Just to tell you like how big this impact is. Some people might say, hey, we're in the digital era, and 9%, that's not a big thing. You have to remember that we did not change anything with the product. We changed nothing with anything except for the sales management instruments. So this is what the actual new plan, what actually happened after the change. And this is what we predicted to happen with the change. You could see that the mean absolute percentage error is less than 1%. Very accurate in forecast. And then this is what the firm would have been if they did not change. So on a margin, just by changing the sales management instruments, we were able to improve sales performance by 10%, which equals to about $17 million. Just a couple of slides. Once again, this is the sales management framework that I came up with, and it depends on what the outcome of interest that an organization wants. If you want to increase the employee retention, that is your #1 priority. Increasing the fixed pay, yes, but at the same time, it might decrease your sales. If you want to increase sales, variable pay and some training opportunities, yes, that would increase sales, but the employee retention would not go high as much. And also in terms of recruiting, if you want to increase your short-term sales, you might want to focus on experience. While if you want to increase your long-term sales, you want to focus your recruiting on the rookies. So it ultimately matters what is the outcome of interest that the firm wants. So now, finally, the contributions to practice and academics. Through this research, we provided a realistic model of salespeople's behavior. It includes most of the elements of behavioral elements of a person, meaning disutility of effort, risk preferences, forward-looking behavior, how much he or she cares about the future, outside opportunities, and responsive to other sales management instruments. You could predict in this way. We could predict the performance of salespeople without actually changing the sales management instruments. Jointly examine the use of multiple sales management instruments. I believe it is one of the first in the academic literature to do this. The practicable impact on Nobel's sales management strategy. actual policy change on compensation training and recruiting, actual improvements on sales performance by close 9%. And it offers a comprehensive sales management framework that I think is applicable in various contexts. That's about it. I started 2 minutes late, so I finished exactly on time at 12:17.
Excellent timekeeping, Doug. And hoş geldiniz, Hakan Bey and Hasan Bey. So any questions for either Doug or for Hasan Bey and Hakan Bey? Judges?
I'll start. You've talked a lot about, the revenue and sales implications. It seems like there could be some cost efficiencies too of the work here. Even if you haven't conducted analysis, any insights on what sort of cost efficiencies are gained by this sort of practice?
Typically, so we got to go into that, and we did this, and it's not in the back of my mind right now, but the EBITDA is typically roughly about 20 to 25% here. So any kind of increase in sales would be transformable to that amount. Once again, I have to get into the real details of that, but that's kind of, in a short answer, that would be kind of the answer. Does that answer your question, Michael?
Not so, you do have some answers in there, like, recruiting changed, right? Your recruiting fees are going to be lower for less experienced people, whose salaries are also going to be smaller. Seems like that's all quantifiable stuff that could
It is. It's just not in the top of my head right now. So basically, I think our counterfactuals was, we wanted to compare apples to apples, right? So it's all these counterfactuals that I showed you were cost equivalent. In a sense, if we were to hire inexperienced, the salaries would be lower. But based on those salaries, will we invest them? The thinking is that we would invest more training opportunities to that. So we wanted to make the cost apple to apples and then compare the gain in revenue. And that's how we came up with the recommendations.
Could you tell us a little bit about how you might think about the concept of quality of management or supervision, and how that type of information could potentially be introduced into a model like this, as well as the potential benefits, as well as potential data difficulties for parameterizing that information?
So I'm assuming the question is, and let me clarify the question. The question is, what's not in the sales management instruments, the three that I introduced, and I think Greg caught on this very well, is it's in a sense monitoring or supervision, meaning how you manage the entire process, the information feed, what's the comp plan like, what's the goal of the firm? Is that the clarifying question?
And I was also thinking the additional definition about the quality of the individuals who are supervising and training and coaching specific salespeople, because that will vary across the enterprise.
It's a wonderful question, and right now, the model is on an individual salesperson's level. You could have another layer that has how the managers, what's the quality of their management and supervision style could sort of reinforce the goal of the firm. Currently, the model is not there. I mean, that's even the way I speak right now, even the model itself right now, it's not the simplest thing in the world to do. Let me put it that way. You could but back to your question, you could put another layer of monitoring and supervision on the manager's side. And I totally agree that the quality of the managers and the quality of supervision and monitoring by the managers would have an impact. Currently, it's not employed in that setting right now. It's employed in a setting where the management, they would utilize these sales management instruments differently, and the information is more or less gone through, and the management and the supervision would be effective. Yeah. Kusum, yes, our salesperson of the session, yes.
As you pointed out, your model is already pretty complicated. So adding more layers to it is going to make it even harder. That said, though, when I look at the recommendations out of the model, they make a lot of common sense. So then the question is, can you go back and now simplify your model so that every time a company wants to do something like this, or add some of the layers that you mentioned in your response to Greg's question, that this kind of a model wouldn't have to be wouldn't have to be specified each time. So it seems to me that the key things here are the size, the nature of your three segments, and the relative size of those three segments. And if I could then somehow get some correlates of observable variables that would allow me to predict whether someone is in one or the other or the third segment, then with that information, I don't then need a model the next time. The company can carry on and say, all right, this is how things are changing. So that's one question, and I'll ask my second question at the same time so that then I can keep quiet and listen to you. Actually, no, let me just pause here. Let me just let you answer that.
Okay, so Christiana asked a wonderful question, and then, so can we simplify the model, and which would give predictions? I believe we can with various machine learning techniques.
No, Doug, let me clarify my question. I didn't say, can you simplify the model? I said, given the output of your model, which is three segments with certain characteristics and certain sizes, which is what is then leading to the recommended outcomes. Can we get some understanding of what kinds of people are in each of those segments and what the relative sizes of those segments are? And would that be enough, at least for a while, for the company to continue to use this model?
Okay, all right, so 3 questions now. Okay, all right. So let me start off with the simplifying of the model. All right, so it can't be simplified. You use machine learning, AI algorithms. Yes, it can be, and it could be a prediction. But at the same time, it will be just a prediction. It will be not why that person failed to do, why that salespeople left. The second question, I think, is can this be applied to other companies? And so as we're speaking right now, I'm working with several consulting companies on this and commercializing this model. And basically you're getting transaction data. You don't have to do an experiment, and you kind of get a good sense of where to go. What is the direction? The third question was, so yes, this is a 3-segment model was our optimal model, meaning the latent class the model would tell us basically, you could say there's about 3 types of people in the sales force. Obviously, that would be different if it's a salesperson in Best Buy and a salesperson in IBM, and even based on regions, that would be different. But that would be what the model algorithm would kind of, I think, put out. And that's based on that algorithm, we would make predictions to inform managers of what's the appropriate direction that you should go. And for example, this conversation comes up to me quite often when there's attrition problems. And I was talking with an Indian firm just a couple of days ago too. Attrition problems, managers' #1 instinct is like, hey, we got to increase our fixed salary. That's like our #1 intuition. But it turns out that it might actually adversely affect the overall sales performance. And you don't want to do that. So anyways, thank you for the question. John, you had a question?
It's maybe not perfectly formed, but actually a combination of Greg's, a thought from Greg's question and Kusun's question. The heterogeneity that you've accounted for here is like low, medium, high. And I'm wondering whether there may be a more nuanced way to optimize salesperson performance by having the kind of heterogeneity that might allow for customized management of individual salespeople based on to optimize against their personal style. So it's a little bit more of a routinized management component. And I realize I'm now complexifying the model that Kusum was trying to simplify a while ago, but it just seems like there's more information and meaning to extract from the model that might help fine tune a salesperson's, develop a separate component of their compensation and bank it to potential rather than simple outcome, and make that contingent on some of the interventions or opportunities for development that a more customized sales management program or training program might afford, or other kinds of enrichments, whether it's internal or external. Just curious about your thoughts about that.
Wonderful question. Wonderful question. So first thing, all right, it turned out it's kind of a little bit different than low, medium, high. Meaning, I kind of label it low, medium, high, but there's 8 different characteristics there you're kind of forming a distribution on, and we think, we saw these latent class, or we kind of label them as low, medium, high. Obviously, the data would tell us if there is more heterogeneity, there will be more than low, medium, high. There will be 7 segments. There will be 12 segments. So that's it. Just turned out that with Nobel Pharmaceuticals, the 3-segment model kind of explained what was going on in the world. Now, the second approach, and I really like your question about, hey, if we could really fine tune heterogeneity and get like, hey, Kusam, she likes commissions. We're going to compensate her on commissions. Oh, on Cone, you like bonuses. Oh, Xiuming, you like cars. And so technically that's possible. From a sales management perspective, when I talk to sales managers, having a different compensation plan would be, there's a couple of things. It would be operationally, having a different sales compensation plan for each individual, operationally would be very, very difficult to operationalize, number one. Number two, there's also this fairness aspect. It's like, hey, Cohen's getting $10,000. Kusam's getting $5,000. Hey, what's wrong? And what's going on? So there's that aspect to it, but I completely get what you're getting out of. And if we were to get more heterogeneity out of it, yeah, I mean, if there's ways to tackle the fairness problem, then individually kind of assigning different elements to the compensation plan or training, by the matter of fact, or anything else in sales management, that will be the optimal way for the firm to go. Does that kind of answer your question, John?
Sure, yeah, helps.
Unless there's any very urgent question from the judges, I'd love to pose this question by Lee McAllister. And this is for Hassan Shahin and maybe Hassan Bey too. What surprised you most about the recommendations? And since I've lived in Turkey for 8 years, I know that Turkish companies are not exactly known for giving a lot of training necessarily. And so what's the most surprising thing that they value training so much are the kind of the baseline salary over the bonus. What surprised you most in what Professor Chung came up with?
I think as I have also presented to the meeting before we started the discussions with Professor Chung, the main intention or thinking was that what would help us was like increasing the fixed salary. Like people were saying that we should be paying better versus the competition, and then like that there was really a high pressure. And I think seeing really the link of getting a bit more aggressive on the variable pay and increasing the salaries, not increasing the salaries, increasing the total compensation for the high achievers was really an eye-opener for most of the team members in the lead team. Plus, also the discussion about like hiring the experienced people versus the new people. There was a question about the efficiency. The real reason why we have like really chosen, and then actually these analyses have also chosen us to go with the fresh hires was not because they are like 10%, 15% cheaper than the experienced hires. Turkey goes through a major restructuring of the pharmaceutical industry. The Minister of Health is changing the pricing scheme, and the pricing like reducing every single year. And then there was really like, we started to work a bit more like FMCG. Like my background is like more on Procter & Gamble and McKinsey prior to joining pharma. So we started really to work and change our route to market strategy like a FMCG. And then the people like with significant increase, significant experience in the pharma industry had like their own habits, and then were not that much flexible to adapt into new way of working. So hiring like fresh people like with good analytical skills, quantitative skills, and then training them properly was not really a cost efficiency in terms of managing the sales costs, but was really helping us in terms of the efficiency, in terms of better sales, in terms of better revenues, and in terms of better EBITDA at the end.
Okay, excellent. Wonderful response, and also really highlighting what kind of structural influences you have in your company that academics, you know, when they make their papers in isolation, don't really are aware of, but that, you know, through close contact, they can help you. Thank you very much. Any other questions by the judges?
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you so much all for joining. I just want to conclude by saying Gary Lillian is sorry it's in the middle of the night for him. He has stayed in Australia with John Roberts, so they were of fantastic help to each of the three finalists in the rehearsal, and so that was so much appreciated. We're going to make the videos available on the YouTube channel. It's just, you know, you Google Gary Lillian Practice Prize YouTube channel, and you also see all the videos of the finalists from the previous editions, which I highly recommend. And at this point, we're going to retreat with the judges to